Chicago, rock and roll, Chicago, my hometown. Well, I was born in the city, go to Rocket City, Chicago. Chicago rock and rollers are the best you're ever around.
Hey, this is Paul Martin
and Ray the Roadie
for the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast. How you been, Ray? Yeah, it says summer anymore, though.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It's fall, isn't it?
It's fall now, yeah.
Oh, no, I should go listen to some fall music, some autumnal melodies.
Now, is that a hint of who we've got today?
It sure is.
And who might that be?
We're speaking with Mike Arturi of the Lovin Spoonful, the current drummer of that group.
Yeah, he's been with them since 1996 and been playing drums with them, and he's a Chicago boy.
He's a Chicago boy, western suburbs, born and raised. Currently residing in Red Wing, Minnesota,
yes,
home of the Red Wing shoes.
Is
not
it?
Not the Detroit Red Wings, but Red Wing shoes.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't think it'd be Detroit Red Wings, but
no, I don't want to confuse you.
Unless they moved, I don't know.
They could. That's possible with this COVID thing. Maybe they said, "Heck with Detroit, we're going to Red Wing."
Yeah, it could be.
That could be a possibility.
Well, Mike's got a lot of things going on. He's the director and the founder of Universal Music Center. Got Turnaround Art School from the Kennedy Center. He's just got a lot of things going on. And
very busy man.
Yes, he is. But we also want to mention that we have a sponsor now. We have a new sponsor.
We do.
Yes, GHS Strings and Musical Products from Battle Creek, Michigan. They're now our sponsor, and we're proud to have them aboard.
Yes, we are. Thank you, GHS Strings.
This is Paul Martin
and Ray the Roadie, and we're here to talk to you about GHS Strings.
That's right, Ray. Whether you play electric guitar, acoustic, or bass,
or even banjo, mandolin, or ukulele, then GHS has the strings for you.
GHS strings are easy to play with a rich, full balanced tone available in many different gauges.
Great for all musical styles. So if you play
with the best. Play GHS strings. So if you're a guitar player, go out there and get some GHS strings and support our sponsor right there. But let's get to Mike Arturi right now and find out what Mike had to say.
Let's do it.
You didn't have to be so nice. I would have liked you anyway. If you had just looked once or twice and gone up on your quiet way. Hello,
everyone. Welcome to the show. Today we're speaking with Mike Arturi, drummer for the Lovin Spoonful, Universal Music Center director and founder. How are you today, Mike?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, guys. I'm very happy to be here.
Glad to see you.
So where do we begin? You sound like you're a pretty busy guy.
Oh, yeah. Being busy's never been a problem. You know, I've got several projects going right now. You know, I have my school that I founded, a 501c3 nonprofit music school here in Red Wing called Universal Music Center. So that's pretty close to pretty much a full-time commitment and then some. And up until, you know, the pandemic hit, you know, I was touring with the Lovin Spoonful, which I've been doing since 1996. And I do session work up here, you know, and I have a couple of music projects here that I'm involved in with some Minnesota-based musicians. And I also work as I do social emotional arts learning programs I'm a national artist for the John F. Kennedy Center Turnaround Arts Program, and also for the Compass Arts Organization here in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I work with at-risk youth, incarcerated youth in juvenile correctional facilities. I work with seniors. I work with vulnerable adults, and I do programs using hand drums as a medium. And it's sort of kind of like a drum circle, but it's a little more involved in that the outcomes are stated prior to the event. You know, like for instance, if a school wants their students to get along better, I will use drum circle facilitation moves, techniques that that kind of have them work with each other. Like I'll give Paul one rhythm to play and I'll give Ray another rhythm to play and have them learn those independently of each other. Then I have them play them together and they realize that it's making one big rhythm, so here you go, they're working together and they're smiling, and it's happening, and they realize that, Paul's cool and, Paul realizes Ray is cool, so that's...
I wouldn't go so far.
Essence of these.
That's what you do with the Turnaround Art School?
Yeah, it's a program. I'm a national artist for that program, and also for Compass Arts Organization. This is based by the Kennedy Center in Washington is the host of the Turnaround Arts, and there's an organization here in St. Paul called Compass that hosts those.
I see. I know that Michelle Obama had something to do with that organization, didn't she?
Yeah, definitely. And there's some big names, on the roster. I look at that website and I'm like, wow, it's Paul Abdul's on there. Oh man, Elton John. I did a double drum thing with Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters. He's an artist, so that was kind of really cool playing with him. Great guy too, by the way. It was so fun, to get together with him. We did this. We played on 2 drum sets, playing off each other for about 11 minutes in a grade school in Rochester, Minnesota. And it was,
oh, wow.
It got real intense, but it was so, he's such an open, nice guy. I mean, there was no competition or anything. It was really, supporting each other and, feeding off each other. It was really exhilarating experience. So that's Turnaround Arts, and Compass is, this is an organization that has all different artistic disciplines: spoken word, hip hop, painters, people that work with little bead art, and stuff. And they go into all these different facilities, senior care, senior facilities, schools, all these different types of venues, and use art as a medium for learning.
I see. So now you're in Red Wing, Minnesota, right?
Yes.
But you started out here in Chicago, right? You grew up in...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
What neighborhood did you grow up in?
I grew up in Westchester. I was born in Taylor and Halsted, and I grew up in Westchester. And then I moved out to Lombard, where I wound up raising my family out there. I've been in the music business or the music scene in Chicago since 1966. Is when I started working professionally. So I came up through all the clubs, and I have a long list of local bands that I played with in Chicago. I moved out to L.A. in '77. I lived there for about 2 years, and then came back and continued working. And I've lived there since up until I moved here. So
when you started here in Chicago, I think I read somewhere where you started pounding on pots and pans, right?
Yeah, spaghetti pot.
Yeah.
in my grandmother's kitchen. I still have it, actually. I still have the spaghetti pot.
Really?
The bottom's all caved in, where I was playing it with the wooden spoons. Yeah, but I was 2 years old, and that's when I started. Wow.
So then, did you take drum lessons then as you grew older? Or
yeah.
How did it progress?
In the very beginning, when I was like 5 and 6, 7 years old, something like that, I was taking lessons, and back then it was, I took lessons from a guy named Hal Dean in Westchester, and, you'd go to his house and go in the basement and he'd show you the rudiments and stuff. And so I was doing that, and he was slowly getting me on the drum set. And then the Beatles came out, and it was all just about bands then, so at that point I stopped the drum lessons. And actually, no, I went even further. I studied with another guy named Randy Shostak, and with him I played in the band at St. Joseph High School, and played at Proviso West High School, in those bands. And then by then, bands, then I started working actually in actual working bands, so I kind of left the formal education end of it then. But what happened with me is at that point, I got in this band in Berwyn, that was a working band. I was 15 years old and these guys were 21, 22, and they were working. And you guys remember in those days, there were all kinds of rooms. I mean, every place had a band, So we were playing all over the place, doing 5-nighters. I was, I'd get home at 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning and be in high school, at 7, sleeping on my desk, but playing, but at one point I realized that if I was really going to do this, I really had to learn my craft. So at that point, this was about 1970 or 71, I went to Triton College and joined this program with a guy named Shelley Elias. And Shelley completely changed my life. I mean, everything changed after meeting him. He was Petula Clark's drummer when she first came here from England. And he got off the road with her and got himself, he was like, why am I touring? There's work in Chicago. I don't have to be on the road. So as a married man, he went back to school, got a master's degree, and started teaching on the college level. And in the meantime, he had the house gig at the Empire Room in the Palmer House. He was writing jingles. I mean, this guy was amazing, and he could do anything. And he taught me, he was the guy, that like, you got to go learn sight singing and ear training. You got to learn how to play the piano. You got to go learn music theory, much more than just drumming. And I was in his percussion ensemble where I learned how to play all the hand percussion instruments, and actually really play them, like how to really play a pair of maracas, we played all these, John Cage compositions and everything, and we read music and all, so it just turned my life around. But along with that, he taught me how to work, and how to be a professional musician. I mean, he would let me come to his gigs at the Empire Room, and I'd watch him perform and how he interacted with he'd be backing Barbara Eden or he'd be backing, all these stars, that would come into the Empire Room for runs. None of them carried bands or orchestras. They had maybe a musical director. And he was the percussionist and drummer on these things. And he was doing all these shows and, he'd run, I'd watch him running out of Triton, virtually running to his car because he had to get to a rehearsal at McCormick Place or something, And he showed me, how to use 24 hours of the day, in a productive manner, and how to be a pro, how to show up on time, how to be respectful of leaders, how to, everything, how to work, how to get dates, how to get work, how to network, everything. There's not a day that goes by to this day that I don't use something that I learned from that guy, so, hugely important person in my life, and I guess maybe along with all this, one of the most important things I learned from him is through the language of written music, the actual traditional notation. I learned how to learn. I could learn anything I want to learn now, because I could read music and I can just go and say, okay, I want to get this technique. And there's, I could find it notated online now, or by books, and so I've continued learning and I've continued my education all along. I study with Greg Bissonette, I study with one of my best friends is Ainsley Dunbar. I've studied with a guy named Zorro, I've worked with, every time I'm out on the road with the Spoonful, when we go to New York or California or some of these bigger meccas, I'll find a A-list drummer, and I'll find, they all teach, they'll all take a student, so I send them an email, and the name Lovin Spoonful gets them to at least open the email up, and
Sure.
And usually I can connect with them and I'll go take an hour or a 2-hour lesson. Bernard Purdy's another guy I studied with. And I'll learn enough in 2 hours that it takes me 6 months, to digest and actually learn everything that they just taught me, And I don't go in there asking them about licks and stuff. I'll go in there asking them about a specific thing, that a style that I want to understand better, or a concept. I don't really care that much about fancy drum fills. I mean, with me, it's about the language of drumming and how to make these various styles work. What's the mechanics of them. So I still do this. I'm taking a lesson with Greg online, Greg Bissonette, next week actually. So I continue to try and learn to this day.
Wow, and you teach as well. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you're a teacher as well, right?
Yeah, right now I don't teach one-on-one lessons. I'm doing more group stuff. At my school, Universal Music Center, I'm really too involved in the administrative end of it and trying to promote it and make it grow and be a sustainable business. That I hired a drum instructor, who's actually more dedicated to teaching one-on-one than I am. So. But I do all the group, I do 4 official UMC concerts a year with the students, and I produce those concerts. And this other stuff I was talking about earlier, this social emotional arts learning stuff, these are the types of things I'm doing now with teaching.
So let's get to some of the bands that you played with in the Chicago area. Since this is the Rock and Roll Chicago podcast, we'll talk a little bit about some of your Chicago connections.
Oh, I'm happy to. The first notable one was a band called Joshua Tree. And this goes back, to Haymakers and Rush Up and, rooms like that. And I think that might have been in 1971 or something like that, the early 70s. I was playing with them. From there, I moved to Los Angeles, and in LA, I played with Robbie Krieger from The Doors, and I did a lot of session work at the Record Plant and at Warner Brothers, and I did a bunch of projects, songwriter projects in LA. Then I came back to Chicago, and I started working with Nancy Davis, who went on to become the lead singer in Tough Love and Bitch. In these days, though, she was a lounge singer, right? And we used to do like the Holiday Inns and the Sheratons and all that. And, we'd sit in, the Sheraton downtown for 4 months working 6 nights a week, and then we move over to Arlington Heights and do 3 months there. She was great. She could sing anything. And I was the one that prompted her to sing rock and roll because I said, man, you could really, she had a groove, she had a feel, a groove, and next thing I know, she's singing with Tough Love, which was Bitch at the time,
Right.
So, but from her, I got the job with the Rick Saucedo show. And this was when Rick was in his prime. I caught about the last year of his heyday. So I got on that band, and it was just fantastic. I mean, he was packing places. I mean, that guy, we would sit in the Field Supper Club, and play 6 nights a week for 6 weeks in a row and sell out Tuesday nights and stuff, And he would have, they would rent halls, they used to rent this place called the Four Torches on 53 in Lake Street. And, this is a banquet hall, and he'd sell the thing out, and we went to New York. We played the Paramount Theater in New York. We used to play in Cincinnati, all these places all over the country. It was tremendous. It was really a great experience, a great band, and that guy was 100% on every night. I mean, he was tremendous.
He still is. I know Rick quite well. And
do you really?
And he still is. He still draws a crowd too. I tell you,
he's the best. I think he's the best one out there. He was the first among the first, anyway.
Oh yeah.
And what a singer too. You take away the jumpsuit, and the Elvis act, and man, I mean, you got a guy that can sing his butt off.
Right.
So yeah, and he was a good frontman too.
What was the name of the band? Was it the Ambassadors or something?
Yeah, the Fabulous Ambassadors.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I've worked with Rick. I was the house sound guy at the Blue Chip Casino in Michigan City, Indiana, for many years. Yeah. And I worked with him there on a regular basis, at least once a month.
Sure. Yeah. Oh yeah, he's great. So from there though, I got the Jade 50s at the time approached me about playing with them, and Rick.
Joe
Catafio, yeah. Rick's dates were starting to, they weren't dwindling, by any means, but it was getting less and less, we were having gaps, When I joined, there was no thought of where we're playing next week. We're working, Right. So it started to get a little more sporadic, and then...
those were the good old days, weren't they?
Oh, man, how about it,
Yeah.
I tell you that nobody understands it today,
Yeah.
Nobody understands a 5-nighter or a 6-nighter.
Right.
But then I went to work with Joe in Jade and learned about 7-nighters. That guy worked like all the time, man. He was just, I love him. He's one of my closest friends. We were friends to this day. When I first got in that band, man, it was just on fire. It was like the end of that era where the drinking age was 19. They were hanging off the rafters, and we worked. I did. One time we played 48 nights in a row, 48 dates in a row without a day off. And some of those days had like 2 and 3 gigs on them. It was summertime, so he'd have like 2 festivals booked and a club at night, and he found Monday nights, and Sunday afternoons, and it just worked,
Yeah.
And it was great, he was, fellow Italian, all those guys were Italian, so it was like a Sunday at my parents' house, the whole thing. So I spent a long time with him, and then the same thing started to happen, where we tried to do the original music thing, this was the time, when off Broadway was big. All these groups, were getting record deals and stuff. So we wanted to try and get a piece of that, and so changed the show from that 50s Shannon thing, into a more of an original music thing. And we did four singles, and got airplay, and we could never actually got the national record deal, but did great, we did great. And then from there I joined Big Twist and the Mellow Fellows, and I played with him for about a year.
No, what year were you with Big Twist?
84 and 85.
I was going to say, who was, I'm trying to think of one of the band members, Pete
Special.
Pete Special, right.
Pete sadly passed away not too long ago, but another great band leader, there's the guy, that we used to rehearse, and he would assign bass drum, kick drum parts to me, he had that music just inside out, those guys had parts, worked out. There was nothing left to chance in that band, and I loved it. There was a guy named Gene Barge, Daddy G, from the song Quarter to Three, Dance with Daddy G,
okay.
That's Gene Barge, and he produced us. So he used to come. We'd rehearse a dress rehearsal with Don and Monica Graylis, and Gene would come in, and he'd have his horn sectional rehearsal. He'd work with the rhythm section, and that was a tight band, that sounded great every single night. And we used to travel. We had days on the road, 500 miles. We'd go and play that night. Go straight to the club, clean up in the bathroom, in the men's room at the club, and hit the stage, and be dead tired, be hungry, be dead tired. But man, once that downbeat happened, man, that band was just on fire every night. It never was not great on stage with them.
Now, was it they do all original music, or was it?
No. There was only a few originals actually, and the rest were rhythm and blues staples, like standard rhythm and blues stuff with their own take on them. Twist was an energy force of his own, and a very, just a super talented guy,
I remember doing a show once with Big Twist. I played in Dancing Noodles, and I know we shared a dressing room with Big Twist at one point somewhere along the way. So you may have been there then. I don't recall. That's why I asked you what year it was, because it had to be 84, 85, something like that. I'm thinking.
It's a unique experience sharing a dressing room with that band.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
What was happening with that is that's all you did. You could only play with Big Twist. There was time for nothing else in your life. My wife and I, got pregnant with our first child during the time I was in the playing with Twist. So I thought, man, I'm going to, at the time too, it made sense to try and start your own band, because there was still enough places to play, So I crafted this plan, to start my own group and to go into business for myself. And I left Twist and I started this little band called Decades. I was working mostly the B rooms, I never really even got the band up to playing haymakers or anything like that, but worked all the time, and from there, I founded a entertainment company, and I wound up doing booking 3 stages at the Hollywood Casino for 3.5 years, and started playing with Joe again with this band called the Giant Killers that we put together, this big horn band. And then I met, I was playing drums on with Dan Hampton from the Chicago Bears on this Sport Vision TV show called Bears 89 and Bears 90, where I met Big John Howell from US 99 Radio, who at the time was on WCKG. And while we were doing that show, he got the gig at US 99. So during these days, Steve Dahl had a band, Jonathan Brandmeier had a band, all these guys had bands, so I'm like, let me put a band behind you, and he's like, nah, I'm a jazz trumpet player, I don't know anything about country music, and I don't want to play. So we could do this, So I finally got him to agree to let me to try and do it, So we got a gig doing an after concert party for US 99. And we learned a set of country stuff, and it went great. It went great. We loved it, So I called Joe Cantafio at the time, who had KCM, and Joe put us on all his festivals, because what would happen is you not only got the band, which wound up becoming a phenomenal band. In the beginning, it was a little shaky, but that band became a monster band, and you would get the band and you'd get mentions on John's program.
Sure.
So you hired the band and you also got advertising for your event, so we were kicking butt. We did like 63 dates,
and packing them in probably, right?
Oh, yeah.
Big John Holland, the Born to Boogie band.
That was it. Yeah.
Born to Boogie, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And from there, from that period, I got the audition with the Lovin Spoonful and got that gig in 1996, and I've been there ever since. And during the time I played with the Spoonful, or been playing with the Spoonful, I toured with Badfinger for 1.5 years. I did Gary Lewis and the Playboys for 2 years, and I did 3 tours with Head East, all while I was playing with the Spoonful. So I was able to kind of, by luck, the dates didn't conflict, and it all worked. So,
I've done some shows with Head East too, or a couple.
Yeah, Roger Boyd.
Yeah. We just our band just played last night, and we told a story about the road crew came and they forgot his keyboard.
Oh boy!
So he used our keyboards players' equipment. And then at the end of the night, when they did Never Been Any Reason, they called us up and we got up there and sang it.
Oh, cool.
The whole band was up there playing with
him. Yeah, that's great.
He was working out of Kansas City or somewhere, though.
Where Chuck Berry is from.
St. Louis?
Yeah, that's where he lived.
Okay, maybe it was St. Louis. Mm-hmm. I know, yeah. Didn't you do a stint with Black and Blonde, too, with Cliff Jackson?
Yeah, I did. I was in the original Black and Blonde, and I subbed with Dick Holiday and the Bamboo Gang for 4 months. Greg Marsh was going to come in and be their drummer. He was playing in a band that had a record deal at the time, and they were recording, and they needed somebody to play until he was available. So I went in and auditioned and got the gig and had a great time with those guys. It was one of the coolest times of my life. I subbed with Deluxury. I did dates with them. I was on the Big Bear Band, that played on the field at the Chicago Bears games.
Oh, okay.
Did that for 7 years with Bill Archer. And with Joe Cantafio, I played with a boatload of stars from the 50s and 60s. We did Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, the Coasters, the Drifters, the Marvelettes, Martha Reeves, Freddie Cannon, Del Shannon. There was a long list of artists, that we played with Joe. So those were really great experiences as well.
Let's take a time out here for a second.
Road to Rock Radio is proud to welcome Paul Martin of M&R Rush and the Dancing Noodles and Ray the Roadie, the Rock and Roll Chicago Podcast. Join Paul and Ray as they bring you weekly interviews from bands that have rocked Chicago. It's the Rock and Roll Chicago Podcast, Monday night at 6 on Road to Rock Radio.
Now, when Spoonful was inducted, you got to play, obviously, right?
No, they used the 4 original guys who were still alive, and so they pulled the 4 original guys together, and that's the only time they played together since they broke up in the 60s. They did a little thing in the 80s with they played on this movie called One Trick Pony, I think it was called.
Oh yeah.
And, they did the soundtrack for that. They reunited for that. But John has been a solo artist since the 60s, and Zalyanovsky had a real successful restaurant in Kitchener, Ontario, I think, in Canada. He's from Canada.
Yeah.
And he had this restaurant called Chez Piggy, and he was doing great, with the restaurant, so he wasn't interested in playing, but when I first joined, it was Joe Butler, who was the original drummer, who's up front singing, phenomenal singer, sings all those songs. He's almost 80 years old. He sings all those songs in the original keys still.
And that's great.
He's a killer every night, great performer. Steve Boone, original bass player, one of the most unique bass players I ever played with in my life. And then Jerry Yesser was in the group, and Jerry replaced Zal in the original lineup. So that's the Spoonful. And then we have a guitar player named Phil Smith out of Harrison, Arkansas.
So how often is the band playing? Or not now with COVID, I know.
We're playing.
No, we're not playing at all. We had the whole year was canceled. We do have some dates booked starting. We have quite a few dates booked starting in April of next year. We don't know, what's going to happen, if they're going to come through or not. If it's going to be safe to work yet or not. The word from agencies and so forth is that larger venues are going to have trouble. They're going to be the last ones that come back on board. Because of if you think about just the economics of it. If you take a $15,000 band, and you have a 1,500 seat venue, and you can only use a third of the seats, the math just doesn't work anymore. So it's tough. So the next wave, the next focus is going to be smaller venues. And another problem with national acts is that airline is so expensive. So it's just it's tight economically, to have a band like that, so you have to have a price tag of some sort, that you can afford to buy air, and get to the dates, and make it worthwhile.
What kind of dates was the Lovin Spoonful doing before COVID struck?
Theaters, showrooms and casinos, and package shows with other 60s artists. So all concert-based stuff, no corporate, very few festivals.
How many shows a year would you be doing?
We did about 30, we're doing about 30 dates a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you consider any one of them takes up 3 days, you fly out the day before, play, and then fly home the next day, it's 90 days on the road, Not a breakneck pace, it's certainly, I was able to get my school going, while I had all that happening, but it was enough, it was steady, and we're, no one is expecting to not get back together. We the band is still alive and kicking and ready to go. We just have to.
Who were some of the bands, the 60s bands that you worked with, that you did shows with?
All the bands from the 60s, the Turtles, Grassroots, Paul Revere and the Raiders, Felix Cavalier from the Rascals, who would be some of the others. We did a couple of tours with America, where we were the opening act for America. What else? All those groups, basically you name anybody that had a record,
right.
In the 60s, we played with them. We did 2 of those PBS fundraiser things, where I got to meet Michelle from Mamas and Papas and Spanky McFarlane from Spanky and Our Gang, and Denny Doherty. I met him. Got to meet a lot of people with them. It's been a great experience, and they're chomping at the bit to get back. I miss playing that stuff, and I miss them, and it's another family, that I've been fortunate enough to be a part of.
Yeah. So Tommy Shekel.
Yeah, of course. I know him real well. We just did a cruise ship not long ago together. I've known Tom forever from the scene in Chicago.
Right. We did an interview with him, and he's a character. He's a good guy.
Great guy. Yeah, great drummer too.
Yeah.
Ray, you got to know this guy, Ron Lemon. Ron had Quality Concerts as his company.
Right.
You probably worked with him, Paul. I'm sure.
Yeah, I know Ron. Yeah.
Noodles and stuff. Ron got me the audition with the Spoonful. And
really?
I met Ron when I was playing with Twist. Ron owned the PA system that Twist rented and took out on the road with them.
Okay.
So I got to meet and hang with Ron back then. And when I started Decades, he gave me a ton of festival work on all the festivals that he was producing. So Ron is a big part of my life, and I spent a lot of time in airports and airplanes and hanging with him on the road, and had a lot of fun with that guy.
So what's the Spoonful? Do you have a couple of favorite songs that you love to do with them? I have to tell you that I was a big fan of Summer in the City. Was one of my favorite songs as a kid.
Hot down, summer in the city. Back of my neck, get dirty, pretty. Been down in a pity. Doesn't seem to be a shadow in the city. All around, the people looking half dead, walking on the sidewalk, hollering in their chair. But tonight it's a different world. Going out and you find a girl. Come on and dance all night. Despite the heat, it'll be all right. And babe, don't you know it's a pity of the days? Can't be like the nights in the sun.
I'll tell you what, Paul. We've all played these songs in bands, but there is nothing like playing them with the guys that played them on the records, And Summer is one of my favorite songs to play. I love that one. There's a song called "Didn't Want to Have to Do It" that was cool to play. All of them, I like all of them. We opened the show with "You Didn't Have to Be So Nice," which is a great opener. Starts with a drum fill. I like that, so that's the first thing people hear. And all those songs go over, people relate, you could just see, you could just feel the memories and the things that music is bringing back to people. And, we sell merchandise and sign autographs and, so many touching comments, of guys that were Vietnam veterans, that the music helped them get through Vietnam, and who met their wife, who met their husband, listening to Lovin Spoonful music, it's just, it's a part of the American music, so I'm very grateful to be in that band and extremely proud of being a small part of that heritage.
Do you have any endorsement deals with
I have WFL3 drums, which are phenomenal drums that are made by Bill Ludwig III, the grandson of the founder of the Ludwig Drum Company. And he's making his own drums now, and they're super high quality instrument, and they're just beautiful. But WFL3 drums, are something that I'm using now, and I'm very proud of those too. It's just been a great drum set. And I met Bill. I had a Ludwig endorsement while I was playing with Rick. I got a Ludwig endorsement back in the 70s, and I did 3 of those worldwide Ludwig endorser posters, and been friends with Bill ever since. And when he started this company, he called me and offered me an endorsement, and I proudly accepted it as well.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Now, you're currently involved with the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum on Route 66, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
In what capacity are you involved?
Well, I'm going to be the education director, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up an entire music education department for them. So we've been working on that, and as you know, they're building right now, and they're getting the facility together, and I'm going to implement a lot of the procedures and the things that I've worked out for the past 10 years here in Red Wing with my own school. You know, I'm going to bring I've got all the invoicing down. You know, I've got the marketing part down. You know, I've got the paperwork down. You know, processes, procedures. You know, so all of those things that I've created for my school, Universal Music Center, I'm going to implement with Ron in the museum. So, and I'm really looking forward to it because I'm excited to see how it goes. You know, Red Wing is a tremendous arts community in a beautiful, beautiful setting here, but it's a small town. It's 16,000 people, and Goodhue County, which is the county we're in, southeast Minnesota, is about 45,000 people in the whole county. So, you know, I've got a strong attendance, you know, at Universal Music Center, but I'm interested to see how these things work in a more of a urban setting, you know, in a larger population. So I'm looking forward to, you know, to that. There's a lot of good symmetry, you know, and there's a lot of good things happening with that museum, you know, that can translate out into the community. So we've already established a relationship with District 86, Joliet School District, to funnel students in, and I've got some instructors lined up that I'm interested in bringing on board. And you know, as the build out gets closer, you know, that's when I'm going to kind of flip the switch on all of this and make it all become an actual reality. But I've very much enjoyed, you know, knowing Ron, you know, and putting the thing together with Ron and Debbie Jo, you know, and watching it come to fruition. So, yeah, that's going to be great, you know, and I'm looking forward to it. Well, I don't know a timeline right now. You know, it's all based on the build out and them getting, you know, all their permits together and everything, you know, to allow people to come into the building on a regular basis. But I'm confident as soon as that hits, you know, there's going to be a great influx of students there. You know,
well,
so.
good luck with that. I know Ron's doing great things with the museum and hopes to get it up and running very soon.
Yeah, he's got his, you know, he's definitely got his heart in the right place, and he believes in it, and he's focused on doing good, you know, and this is something I experienced here in Red Wing. You know, I get a lot of support from the community because I'm truly and honestly focused on, you know, a positive environment and doing something good and you know, having an outlet for not only children but people of all ages that are interested in learning to play music and kind of share that gift of music and the things that it'll do for you. It's a great positive thing to put out. When I was putting this thing together, UMC, I had to do a presentation to all the powers that be here in Red Wing. So I'm on a flight with the Spoonful from all the way across the country. We were going from New York to California. So I was racking my brain trying to think of what did I learn playing music? What were the life skills that I gained, you know, through the music industry, you know, and through playing music and being involved in it. So I came up with a list of about maybe 15 things. Got into my hotel room. I Googled life skills learned by playing music. Every single thing that I thought about that I realized from my own regular natural experience with playing music was on all of these web pages, you know. So this is all tried and true real stuff, you know, that I didn't, it was verbiage that was verbatim of the things: self-confidence, people skills, using your creative mind, networking, you know, all of these types of things were on that list. So these are the types of things that I've kind of based the experience and the learning process on. So I think it could be a great thing for the community in Joliet.
Have you ever considered writing a book?
I thought, you know, it's a funny thing to think about. Before all of this changed with the pandemic, I was going to try and get into public speaking, you know, and I put a public speaking presentation together. As I'm learning about the ins and outs of public speaking, they all say you need to write a book because a book makes you an expert in the eyes of the public speaking world. You know, I know they were saying people had a book, you know, that had blank pages and it's saying, what do you think about this? You know, and that's their book. You know, write your thoughts down, you know. So it's a funny thing to sit there and think of writing. I'm like, who cares about my life. You know what I mean? What do I? I don't have
Right.
gold records or platinum albums I can tell people about. But if you think about it, everybody's got a story. And there's something to be learned, from everyone's story, so I'm thinking about it more and more, and not in the sense of trying to have it become a New York Times bestseller or anything like that, but maybe just as a way, to go back through my life, and see, what kinds of things happen. What did I make happen? What did I focus on? What was a goal, that I accomplished, and how did I do it? And maybe someone can gain from that. Maybe it's close enough to resonate with somebody that's the part I wasn't thinking about. That's the thing I should think about and do. So if I ever were to write a book, it would certainly not be from an egotistical, look at me standpoint. It would be a complete standpoint of maybe I could help with some of the experiences that I've had. Maybe it can rub off and help with somebody else. That'd be the only reason I would do something like that.
That seems like the educator in you.
I like to share, I like to share, all of us, we all have mentors, we all have musicians and people that do what we do that we look at, and see like, I want to do that. How did he do that? And if you get to meet that person, you talk to them about it and they tell you, and you go, man, I'm going through the same thing. I was thinking that already, so it reinforces what your gut feeling is already thinking, so these kinds of things that I like to try and help, I gave my son a drum lesson years ago. Right. And then came back and gave him a couple more, and he came back and he's playing, and he's out and going, so I'm like, well, okay, I got to share what I gave my life to with my son for 4 drum lessons, so maybe I could talk to somebody else with all this stuff, so that kind of got all this started, just trying to think of, well, I gave my life to this, committed in a committed, serious manner, so if I could help anybody save a step, or something like that, I'm happy to do it. If this is okay, I don't mean to promote myself because there's nothing there to promote, in terms of, but I have a website called MikeArturi.com, and I do a weekly radio piece here in Red Wing called A Minute with Mike. And I talk about all these things, it's a little 2.5, 3 minute little blurb, about some of my thinking on this, that, and the other, all about this kind of stuff, like ways to think about things and save some time. And I got a bunch of music that I played on there, and there's a ton of Spoonful stuff on there, and some of my drum solos and things, but a lot of that thinking and that kind of thing is on the website. So if anybody wants to check it out, it's MikeArturi.com.
Well, we thank you for spending some time with us today, Mike.
Oh, guys, I'm so grateful. Thank you. I'm very grateful to be here, and thank you very much for having me. And I've been talking about this all, but anything I could do to help, please call on me. I'd be happy to chime in.
All righty.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, fellas.
Thanks.
Bye.
What a day for a daydream. What a day for a daydreaming boy. And I've been lost in a daydream, dreaming about my bundle of joy.
So that was Mike Arturi, drummer for the Lovin Spoonful. He's drummed with a lot of people, hasn't he?
Holy cow, so many people. I mean, and played with so many different bands and got to know all these people. It's been a busy, busy life for him.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. And he's quite the educator as well, too.
He is.
He does some teaching and teaching in group basis and helping kids.
Very knowledgeable man.
Underprivileged kids, yes.
Yeah, he's got his nonprofit organization going there, which is awesome. And there's no signs of him slowing down.
No, and he will soon be involved with the Illinois Rock and Roll Museum.
Yeah.
Which you can hear our podcast on every Monday on the Road to Rock Radio, right?
That's right. He'll be our neighbor there.
Yes, he will. Yes,
he'll be right near our studio if we ever get back to our studio.
Well, we'll be sharing a room.
We may be. I think he's gonna be downstairs.
Oh, okay. All right.
The classrooms will be downstairs, and we're gonna be right in the window.
We are in the window.
We're going to be in the front window, so when the studio is all up and around, you guys can come and watch us do a podcast and really see that we definitely have faces for radio.
That's correct. That's correct. Yes. Yes.
Well, I'm going to just kick back, and I found myself some autumnal music. This is called Autumn Leaves.
Okay.
Well, I got out of the summer in the city, out into the country with the autumn leaves and pumpkins.
Hey.
With that,
Hey.
I bid everybody a fond adieu. Until next time.
You go relax with your autumnal music, will you?
I am going to relax with my autumnal music.
Okay. All right.
Have a good week.
We'll talk to you soon.
See you next time.
Bye. The Rock and Roll Chicago podcast does not own the rights to any of the music that's played on this podcast.
The music is used to promote the band or musicians that are interviewed.
Rock and roll Chicago, rock and roll Chicago, my hometown. Well, I was born in the city, go to Rocket City, Chicago. Chicago rock and rollers are the best